Hello, everybody. Welcome. Regards from Boston. Since we're going to be talking today about the Chopin G minor Ballade, the first Ballade, I want to ask all of you, if you can, to please get scores, get music. You'll get much more out of this whole lecture if you can follow the score and maybe write some things in your score. Okay? So, as we all know, Chopin wrote 4 ballades. There is some thought that each of them has a story based on the Polish poet Mickiewicz, who was a friend of Chopin's. This is a story that was passed on by Schumann, but there's really no proof that actually he was influenced by the poems. Nathaniel, I see you and not me. Is it possible to change that balance? Oh, great. Okay. Hi. I think that you have to think of these pieces as pure music. There's not program music. You know, the way Liszt and Schumann wrote pieces that had stories. I mean, Liszt wrote about Mephisto Waltz with a poem, or St. Francis on the Waves, or these kinds of things. There are specific programs. But Chopin's music is always more pure, more abstract. Of course he was telling stories, but the stories are for him to know or for us to decide and convey. The first ballade is absolutely perfect piece. There's a reason why it's so popular. The structure is perfect. The themes are all perfect. There's not one note that's not absolute magic and wonderful and perfect. And, even Chopin wrote a few pieces that weren't as good as others, or like there's a certain place, you think, whatever. But the ballade, first ballade, is just a perfect piece, a perfect audience piece. Actually, I think of the 4 ballades, it's by far the best audience piece, the best concert piece. The 4th ballade maybe is the most complicated and mature, but it's not as good with the audience. And the 3rd ballade is not quite such a virtuoso piece, and the 2nd ballade, well, I don't really like the 2nd ballade very much, but it's not as developed a piece as the first ballade. So before I start, I want to say a word about editions for Chopin. There is no such thing as a perfect Chopin edition. Chopin, sometimes we have the manuscripts, sometimes we don't, but in his own lifetime, he would publish the piece, let's say in France, because he was living in Paris, and then a publisher in England would say, oh, could we publish this ballade? And so he would say, yes, of course, and he would make some changes and then send it off to them, and they would publish it. And then in Germany, they would say, oh, can we publish this piece? And he'd say, of course, and make more changes. Chopin was an improviser. He was always making changes. So many times we have Chopin himself made different variants of things in the piece. So there's no way to say really that something is the definitively perfect edition of Chopin. There's pianists, we all have our preference about certain things, ties or dynamics or touch or whatever. But I think the best thing to do is to get an edition that has an appendix in the back where it tells you the different changes. It'll say FE for the French edition, GE for the German edition, etc. This is, I think most people would feel that the Paderewski edition, edited by Paderewski, is sort of the normal Chopin edition. But there are things in that edition too that, as we live with these pieces and study different scores and hear them and live with them and teach them, that you think you don't like. For example, the beginning of the F minor Fantasy. In the Paderewski edition, he has a dot. but the Schirmer edition has. And I personally prefer that, even though most of the more scholarly editions have it with a dot. There are things like this everywhere in all of the pieces. The Henley edition, I'm actually going to use that today just because I pulled it off of the shelf. I have many editions, but the thing with the Henley edition is the fingering. I'm sure you've all played Henley editions, and you see in the front it says, fingering by Hans Martin Theobald. And this guy wrote fingerings for a great many Henley editions. And the editions are often, especially for German music, fantastic editions, but the fingerings are so horrible, you know, and it's always been a joke, like, who is this guy that nobody's ever heard of that fingered all of music? And now finally, actually, I found out recently, Theobald was a local piano teacher, and Henle himself, the man, was a German, very wealthy industrialist and an amateur pianist. And he decided that there weren't enough really good Urtext editions, and he was going to pay to make all of these Urtext editions. And he hired his piano teacher, Mr. Theobald, to write all these fingerings in. Well, Mr. Theobald couldn't play these pieces. He didn't know these pieces. So I just have to caution you against fingerings. The fingerings, Chopin didn't really write fingerings. But he was very careful about everything else. Okay, so that's sort of some general thoughts. Now, what I'm going to do is go through this piece from beginning to end, stopping all the time and talking to you about certain things, whether structural things, analytical things, basically focused on how to play this piece, in my opinion. So the piece begins with an introduction, and it's just, I don't know, half a dozen bars, but many, many students get into trouble with the introduction. And many times people play this piece in competitions, and they're eliminated right away after 6 bars because they don't follow the score. So I think, you know, we have to make intelligent interpretation based on, you know, the score. So the first thing is that Chopin writes forte pesante with no diminuendo until he gets to here. So I think you need to stay up in the beginning. You need to pedal, I think if you pedal on the C's, change, because really it's just going. That's the idea. Here, people play the wrong rhythms. It's eighth notes, triplet, dotted rhythm. So I'm playing freely, but I'm playing, these are eighth notes, I'm playing eighth notes. Triplet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So it's unbelievable how many mistakes people make just in the beginning to there, okay? So be careful. Now here he has a lot of tension in that chord. We have no idea what key we're in. I mean, this piece is in G minor, but we've had nothing in G minor. There's no sense that you're in G minor. And now, for the first theme, he's going to put us into G minor. Okay, so this first theme it comes back in this original form 3 times in the piece, and they each are a little bit different in character or tempo. Chopin writes an accent on the first note and double stems it. That note. Now, of course, he doesn't want that kind of an accent, but neither does he want you to ignore it. And very often that's how we hear it. I think this is it's a gentle sort of a love accent, you know? The tempo is, the time signature is 6/4, so 6 quarter notes in a bar, so it's basically in 2. And the whole piece is pretty much in this until the coda. So you should feel it in 2. And now you need a plan for the first theme. Well, you need a plan for everything. First of all, if you don't have a plan, then your playing makes no sense. And second of all, if you have a plan, then you can do whatever you want. Because actually you only get freedom in playing with a plan. Because you can change the plan, you can alter the plan, but you have a plan. Music will make sense. So the first theme has a first part and then a response and then a longer phrase. So it's a short phrase, long phrase. And then he repeats that sequence. So here. And now the response. Now he starts again and he's going to do a longer phrase. That's the first part, first half of the theme. The theme is accompanied by these dotted sort of portato quarter notes. They have to be soft to make because you really want to hear the theme. And the second one is, I think, softer than the first one of those 2 accompaniments. And you can rearrange it's written like this, here, like this. It's written with 3 notes in the right hand, but you can play 2 and 2 if you give more control. It doesn't matter how you arrange it. But that's how you balance, okay? And here's the second part. He's going to change it. So first of all with a new harmony, and he goes up. So what am I doing? I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. So the first thing is, now he reaches and he has that beautiful melody on top, and then he does it again with a variation in the left hand. So in the left hand, it has a tie in the half. You have to hold. So I hold the thumb and I come over, but I'm holding, so it's not that, it's... Okay, so we have the first time. Now he repeats the right hand, but the left hand has a beautiful variation. It's important to remember even when you don't just do, you need to hear the right hand also. It's a duet. This thing where he writes, and then he does it again here. In Chopin, you interpret that like this. Not, but that's the style. Color. So rubato, the act of, well, literally robbing time to move it and stretch it. If you have two phrases and you do rubato on the first phrase and then rubato in the second phrase, usually that doesn't work because it becomes flabby and the phrases have no. You want to do, for example, here, I'm going to play the first time more straight. So then when I take time on the second one, it seems beautiful. If I take time on both of them, the second one, it's not so beautiful anymore. It's sort of boring. So now I've earned time. Now he takes these A's in the right hand, and they continue until they explode into this beautiful flowery ornamentation. So here. Listen to the A. If you want to do something fun at the end, you can do that. You can play it straighter if you like. But you're going to hear, and you have to finish your phrase. So don't take too much time before that so you can finish your phrase. Now he takes something and he does twice, again with variation. So the first in the right hand, he ties this note. And you want to hear that. And then he does it agitato with a completely different touch. And that second one is going to take you into a very turbulent section. So now, one of the big things in Chopin playing, I think one of the most actually important things for pianists to remember is that we have to be careful about the volume of the left hand, especially when we have octaves. Chopin is not Liszt. Chopin is not Rachmaninoff. If you play too big in the bass, then you lose the balance and you lose the melodic quality. You have to be extremely careful. And throughout this, I'm going to show you some places to demonstrate that idea. But here, I want to hear the syncopation. I want to hear. So I don't want to hear. Because many people do that. They're playing the left hand too loud, and then you don't hear resta, umpa, umpa. So, okay, now we have this great page, which is going to then have one of the most incredible transitions, I think, in all of Chopin to get to the second theme. So here we go. So where I stopped is where the transition to the second theme starts. So this place, again, you need balance. In the left hand, I hear that thumb melody. La, sol, mi, re. La. So the right hand is virtuosic, but not so loud that you lose that left hand. Rest. Here, I think some intelligent pedaling will help you a lot. Chopin is very exact. He writes an accent, and then a half note, an accent, and it's all slurred. So I think you should pedal so you have clean. You're pedaling clean harmonies. Change. Like that. Okay. Now, the right hand from here to the second theme is, people play this much too loud. It's shaped. But it's not this. It's not that, which is what most people do. Now, meanwhile, the left hand has two things going on. It introduces the horn call. And the horn call is going to become the second theme. In the left hand, in the bass, he has these big pedal points which modulate. Different register. You want to change pedal here. So that means that hopefully you can reach a 10th so that you can hold the 5th finger. So that then this is all one pedal. And Chopin wrote this pedal. Don't change, don't change, don't change. Change. And that pedal helps to make the magic of the second theme. So you're balancing the bass octaves, the horn calls in the middle, which is almost number 1, and the right hand arpeggios, which are shaped around it. That's a smorzando, dying away, diminuendo. Don't do this. Many people think that that's like some virtuoso etude. So now we're in our second theme. The second theme, be careful with the pedaling. If you want, you can pedal two ways. You can do change, 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 or you can hold the bass note. That gives you a richer harmony. Or this. Sorry. It's not a right or wrong, it's just a matter of taste. Here he has 3 B flats with an accent on the third one. And now he does it again. Now the accent is on the first B flat, which creates a beautiful diminuendo effect. He writes meno mosso, less fast, less motion. But now we have to get back into the tempo of the first theme. So that theme, there are some like this one. Some editions have this, and some have. They're both beautiful. These are the kinds of things that. This is why you should have knowledge. You know, if you have knowledge, you know these two things, and then you can decide on the spur of the moment which one. And if somebody wants to criticize you, you can say, well, I'm sorry, this is in the French edition, I'm sorry, this is in the English edition, this is what is in the Polish edition, whatever. So you can defend what you're doing and do whatever you want. You know, this is the secret of play. Okay, so now... this ending of the theme... It's like a sigh. And this is like the little epilogue, the codetta, sort of the meaning. Now you're in E flat major, so you're getting closer to your home. And this section flows. You need to sneak into the tempo here. In this section, there are a couple of things. One thing is to be careful about the rhythms, because he writes sometimes eighth notes and sometimes triplet. And then eighth note. And people tend to get mixed up with the eighth notes and the triplets. Also, he has some beautiful inside voices. Here. I'm exaggerating it, but it's just like a beautiful little second voice. Now he has a variation, and he has a magic note. You know, the secret of taking time is knowing how much to stretch without losing the line. The secret of all music really is line, the motion, and where you're going to. Every phrase has a destination, every section has a destination, and the piece has a destination from the beginning to the end. So all of the units, you have to feel that they work. And then within that, if you're playing a romantic composer like Chopin, and you have good taste, then you can take time. Yes? Now he's a surprise. Instead of, he does G minor. He's back at the first theme now. This is the second time it appears. This time he marks it a tempo. So it's in the tempo. So this. The first time is gentle. This time I think it has a little bit more agitato in the character, because he's going to start reaching and getting louder and building, and we're going to explode into a climax on the next page. He's written Crescendos Forzando, and now he's going to start that pattern. He wants to until finally he opens it up. Now, if you notice, when I do this, the accompaniments are piano. It's just the top, this forte and sforzando. I don't want to do this, which is very common. You have to understand a dynamic. If you're in forte, it does not mean that every note is forte. You have to balance, the same way you'd balance if it's pianissimo. You know, people play phrasing in a Chopin nocturne so beautifully, and then they play a virtuoso part of Chopin, and all of a sudden everything is loud and ugly and not shaped. You have to balance everything. Okay, so here we go. Now he goes up, down, down, up. Now, we're in E major suddenly. I don't know how that happened. But what is this music? Where did this come from? It's our beautiful second theme. Now it's triumphant and huge. And again, you have to be careful with the balance. The left hand has two voices. The bass line and the inside. It's fortissimo. The right hand is fortissimo. The bass is fortissimo. But the inside, it's almost piano. It's just shaped. And it's really important. And if somebody said to me, I said to you, what dynamic am I playing? You'd say, well, you're playing fortissimo. And that's true. It's marked fortissimo. I'm playing fortissimo. But I'm playing the middle voice in the left hand piano so that I can hear everything. It's balanced. Okay, some different things here. You have a middle voice, which is marked to be held for the whole measure. Some people have trouble holding it. If you have trouble, then as long as you hold it to here and you're changing your paddle, you still actually can sort of hold it. But anyway, same thing here. This G sharp holds. Okay. Here. The top note here is, but buried in the inside is the C sharp, which is the melody. So you have to be careful to voice this. Okay, so don't balance the top for that chord, but do the C, Do sharp, La. And that comes from, but now he's up high. You have these three sets of octaves. The purpose of these octaves is not to show that you have the fastest octaves on planet Earth, It's a sequence. You need to have a plan, and I wouldn't rush too much. I like the last ones to stretch a little bit. I think it's more dramatic. But in any case, just take it easy. Play with style. Not this. That's not stylistic. It's just octaves. You know? He has a little transition section in the left hand. And then here, people only seem to pay attention to the right hand. But actually, there's a very nice... What is that? Here. That's actually beautiful. I think I once saw an edition that has that. I'm not sure whether I made that up or not, but sometimes I do that. Nah, I don't do that. I lied. Now, we have a little scherzo section. This is tricky. These 2 pages are tricky. First thing is the pedaling in the left hand, and the voicing in the left hand. So the left hand is this. So the voicing, you can voice it, you can follow this, and then follow it. So you can have the echo effect. Or you can think of this voice. So, whichever way you like, there's no right or wrong. Pedaling, again, I think you have 2 very good options. One option is to sort of make it a little more scherzo-like, to up, down, up, down. So I'm pedaling the slurs. The other way is to hold the pedal for the half bars. I used to play the first one. But nowadays I think it's safer and sounds nicer in a hall to just do the longer pedal. But either one is fine. Here you have the syncopation in the 2 hands. But the right hand should be very leggerissimo, sort of like Etincelle, like Moskowski or something. Now here's where people start to get into trouble. So I think don't focus too much on the right hand. He has a crescendo, crescendo, crescendo each time. And then a 2-bar up and down. I think that's sort of shaping in the background. The left hand has 2 parts. This is one part, the most important. And I think that's what you should think about. And the left, that stuff should be light. So the left hand, so even though the right hand is making a crescendo, the left hand really starts louder and less. And that makes it really nice and interesting. Sorry. And here, instead of playing this as one huge phrase, 4-bar phrase, which is how it's marked, would be this. But for me, that's not very musical. So I sub-phrase it. Sorry. I can't play it slowly. So then that just becomes subsumed into the larger phrase. But in the right hand, so you're showing that thumb. And the hands together, I'll say. So you have the thumbs in the left hand octaves working in concert. I think that's nice like that. Here, again, it's fortissimo with a crescendo. You have to take that with a grain of salt. If this is fortissimo, start softer. So otherwise you can make a crescendo. Don't do this. It's just too, it's ugly. And you want to show the bass line. Little horns. And again, the right hand has shape, but not so loud. We have this little transitional Scherzo section. He writes leggermente. I think it should be a little bit fast. And you have this. These last two, I wouldn't do them the same. Do different, something different. Something cute, you can do like that. You can do the opposite. Whatever you like, but not the same. When I was a kid, I heard Rubinstein play this in Carnegie Hall. He added the octave, the bass. So in his honor, I always do that. But if I'm in a competition, I'm no longer in a competition, but if you are in a competition, don't add the octave. But if you're playing a concert, you have my blessing. And again, we have our second theme, transformed. So, let's see here. Chopin writes 5, a quintolet. Not quintuplet. Quintuplets are 5 babies. Quintolet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, it's hard. And the left hand is playing 6. Sextet. No, sextuplet. No, whatever it is. So you have 5 against 6. And you know, all these kinds of places where you have 7 against 8 or 5 against 6 or whatever, don't worry about it so much. Don't mathematically figure out. But just feel the pulse. And it'll be fine. People play the wrong rhythm here. They do. But it's It's this eighth note. Be careful. Now here again we have a balance thing. People too often play the left hand too loud. They go like this. But if you want the right hand to sound, when it's accompaniment, it's not equal to the melody. This one, this bar, okay, first of all, you have the trill, and you have the left hand, the thumb in the right hand is portato. So the right hand is legato. And don't do, because that's not a trill. Since you can come off the thumb, just do at least one extra group, so you have at least 4 notes, 5 notes, something. Then we know you're a great pianist. And I think the trill is easiest 3-5. 3-5. And here, again, you have 3 different rhythms going on at the same time. That's polyrhythm, right? Not polyamorous. So you have 6, 4, and 3. 1, 2, 3. So it's, if I do the top with the bottom, 1, 2, 3. If I do the inside, it's 2 against 3. Again, once you practice the combinations, just play it, don't worry about it. Now he has this idea, but now it's con forza, now it's open, it's noble, it's warm. Now remember the first time he did that magic B flat? Now he does a different type of magic, more Polish, let's say. Have to get to here. He writes ritenuto here. Ritenuto, and then he writes domino and rallentando. If you do 3 bars of rit, you'll never get to where you're going. You have to be... know where you're going. Now this is the third time, last time, for the first theme. This one, Chopin writes meno mosso. It's slower. And this one, it's sort of filled with a sort of an inner sadness, a sort of some grief from everything that's happened. Like a sad memory. And he has this pedal tone, sort of insistent. This harmony, instead of this time, there's something so painful about that harmony. Now he's starting to change. He's almost at the coda. So here he has this 2-bar transition to the coda. He got out of the first theme, and now he has this transition so that we're going to end up in this coda. So he writes a lot of things. He writes appassionato in these 2 bars. Appassionato, okay, passionately. He writes il più forte possibile, as loud as possible. That clearly you should not do. You should do a great effect of loudness, but not the loudest possible, because you have like 4 pages of coda fortissimo coming up. Okay, then at the end he writes poco ritenuto, so he wants you to stretch. To stretch before the explosion and the release of the coda. He has, this is the D, it's the dominant, it's a dominant pedal point until we get the coda in G minor. Also, he has this same type of accompaniment in the inside, just like here. So, remember, we're going to shape it, but we're not going to play il più forte possibile. Yeah? And here, the last 2 beats, there's 2 voices in the right hand. But the top voice just keeps repeating a D. So, but the inside voice, so that's moving voice. It's more interesting. So don't just keep hammering on the D. Show the inside voice. Okay, so the coda, presto con fuoco, so it's very fast with fire. There are sort of 2 basic ways to approach this coda, I think. One way would be what I would call the dance way, to think of it as sort of a little bit dancey. And that's perfectly valid. It also lets you play it a little bit lighter if you want. I don't know. I shouldn't quote this, but as I said in the very beginning, I don't believe that Chopin actually wrote these ballades or this ballade based on the poem by his friend. But the poem by his friend was the story of this guy who was at a banquet and he was telling them a story, and he was telling them about these people who had killed their enemies by breathing on them, and the breath from their mouth gave them the plague and probably COVID-19 and God knows what, leprosy, and they just killed them all, And this guy is telling this story, and at the end, he suddenly gets all angry and dark, and he says, he implies that he is going to now do this to all of them. And there's something for me that's cool about that image, that he's sort of all of a sudden, this guy goes from being a storyteller to like Scarbo. He grows from a little thing to becoming a monster, and that's sort of the other way to play it, that actually it's quite crazy that it goes sort of crazy here. So then here, instead of finishing, spring off the downbeat. So it's more, I don't know, I think this way, I don't know, as I've lived this piece and played it so many times and tried it so many ways and little things, this way I think for me now is the better way. Just go crazy, and don't worry if you miss a note. I think actually if you take this approach of just going crazy, actually you won't miss so many notes. You probably won't miss any notes. And if you do, nobody's going to care because they're going to be so terrified and so excited, you know? So here you want to show, there's a line, there's always melodic lines in the codas of Chopin ballades, Chopin scherzos, things like that. If you don't find the lines, then it just becomes banging. And also you have a bass line. Thumb, 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 thumb. Variation. Now this time he shows it, adds a little left-hand line. So when you're trying to show left-hand stuff, back off from the right hand, you know, etc. So I feel like it's almost like Cossacks, you know. So I'm thinking. This accent, I add this accent up. There's absolutely no justification for it except I like it. Instead of, I think it gives it a kick. Here you need to cut back so you can make your crescendo. So now here you're showing the thumbs. Now here you're going to show the pinkies. So the variations. Sorry. Here, several things. Again, you have your dominant pedal point, and this is going to, in your mind, go a very long time until when you start the scales. You have a melody in the left hand. And make sure you hear this F sharp. Right? And then the right hand, in the beginning, it's sixes. And then when you get to the top, here, suddenly the right hand becomes 16th notes. A lot of people don't pay attention to it, so they're faster. So they suddenly, like a volcano, they go to the bottom. When you start this scale, you're holding your pedal until the last note, so you can start much less to make the crescendo. Also, I recommend at the top in the right hand to end with the thumb. I don't think you can see my thumb. Here it is, thumb. Instead of, you normally would do, you would end with 5. Right, scale, but actually if you end with thumb and use your arm, you'll get a lot more power. Same thing for something like Winter Wind Etude, you know. Just at the end, use thumb. Thumb gives power. Fifth finger is hard to get as much power. Anyway. Here, the first time, show the top. And you have to feel the rest. Ba 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 bum, not da da dee da da dum, but ba da dee da da dum. Start less. Now the tops and also the bass. Makes it more tragic, more epic. Again, feel the rest. And here also, most people finger this, everybody. 1, 2, 3, 5. 1, 2, 3, 5. And then you end 4, 4. Well, the fourth is your weakest finger. Here's a trick fingering for you. 2, 5, and then move over 1, 3, 2. 2, 5, 1, 3, 1, 3, 2, 2. That gets your arm involved and gives you much more power. These octaves at the end, well, the first 6 are actually marked poco ritenuto, and then he writes an accelerando. So you should not start and get like that, making an accelerando right away. Actually, it's the opposite. It should feel like it's like something like a giant boulder that sort of drops, and the first time it's slow, and then a little bit faster, and a little bit faster, and a little bit faster, and then it goes, you know. And I think, again, the left hand should be less than the right hand. It shouldn't be equal. That's equal. I think because the right hand will always be wiped out by bass octaves that low. Okay, and at the end you can either hold the pedal for the whole thing, or you can change cleanly on the G. Actually, that makes it louder. You'd think that holding a long pedal for would be louder, but actually somehow having a clean G's at the end makes it louder. Anyway, so if anybody is here, thank you so much for listening. And I am very happy to answer questions about this piece, or Chopin, or the meaning of life, or anything. Get my head here.
Yes, Claudius, just unmute yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. I
don't see him.
I love this so much. Can you see me? No.
Yeah, now I see you. Yay!
Hi.
Claudius, thank you so much for that email. I'm going to write to you. That was, wow, that was something.
Yeah.
That's memories, huh? Do you remember that?
Yes, of course. And I remember your playing.
Really? I don't even remember being there.
No, it was fantastic. I must tell for the other audience, we met in 1979 at the Gina Bachler competition. And I still have the program, printed program, and I saw you, and of course I knew you, and I knew your playing, and well, and I want to congratulate for this wonderful lecture. This was really something special, and I loved it, and I have my music here, and I wrote some ideas. Really, this is special.
Because the truth is that we are always students, right?
Yes.
This is what makes us hopefully what we are, because we always are learning, and I do the same thing. If I'm listening to a lecture, I have my music, I'm writing things, I never stop learning.
Yeah,
this is why you know everything. This is why you know everything, because you never stop learning. Yeah.
And Schumann writes in his book, Es ist des Lernens kein Ende. There is never an end of learning. And this is true. And well, I enjoyed this so much, what you now did.
Thank you so much. It means so much.
I admire your technique and your ability to show this all. And this is really something.
I really appreciate your listening. It's so very touched, very honored.
And the thing with Rubinstein you mentioned in bar 166, I remember. I don't know if I read this in his second book of his memoirs. He writes that he always asked the piano tuner when he was playing second scherzo of Chopin to tune all the keys so that the
Oh, he
keys,
took octaves.
yes, no,
Oh.
up from F, all the keys. He asked the tuner to tune in F, so he just have to have his hand on the last note, and it was perfect. And I and I always tell my students, if you once have a lot of money, please tell the piano tuner, so you will be always sure.
Ugh, you see, we never stop learning.
Yeah.
But you know, the thing was, when I was younger, I mean, in Chopin, I was very commonly would add the bass, you know, double the octave.
Me
But
too.
now I don't do it so much in Chopin. I mean, I do it all the time in Liszt, but I think that's fine, you know.
Yeah.
But in Chopin, I very often don't. I've stopped doing it as much.
I
You know?
shouldn't, yes. I remember this bar especially because at this time I was studying Schumann fantasy, and in the second movement he makes the proposal to get the E flat in the bass with the thumb. So I was thinking, what about bar 166 using the thumb for the left hand thumb for the B?
Well, if you don't, you could do that. That would be another. If you don't double it, then the thumb would give you a lot of power. That's a good idea.
I thought this, because in fact, the Rubinstein idea, which you mentioned, is very good. But as you mentioned, in competition, it can break your neck.
Right. Well, you know, it's all these things that you struggle with when, you know, I think hopefully we have students who are listening who are entering competitions, and it's terrible for them because they have to be thinking about taste in a different way than we do.
Yes.
You know, we only have to we're concerned with our own taste, but they have to be concerned with everyone else's taste. You know?
This is true. No, but this was wonderful, and I have seen and I also played this ballad very often. But this I really learned now a lot of things in this 1 hour. Thank you so much, and you still have the complete capacity of all these technical things. Wow, this
Well,
is.
it's how I make my living until the COVID-19.
No, this is fantastic, and so I really hope maybe next year in Jerusalem see you live.
Wonderful.
And,
I would love to see you again, Claudius. Thank you
all
so
this
much.
would be so. Thank you so much, and wow, it was just wonderful.
Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question. Somebody from Vanessa concerning bar 170. Raised note, the A flat. Should it be held until the octave, or is it repeated?
It's repeated. Does her edition have it not repeated? Have it tied?
She doesn't say, but I believe there are different editions. Like
You know, it's one of those things that would be very hard to hear the difference. You know, actually, I think I slur it. In this Henley edition, which I don't know if it's good or bad, but he has it repeated, but I think I play it tied. So it's instead of, because that sounds more clunky than.
Yeah.
It's a very good question.
Yeah, and another question about tips for memorizing the chromatic runs.
Where are their chromatic runs? Does she have an example?
Let's see. She's writing here in chat. She says that she has also the Henley edition.
Yeah. You know, actually, I hate this edition, so I don't know why I have it. I think just because the notes are big. Chromatic scale. Oh, you have like this. That's not really chromatic, but
31.
Maybe in the codec, yeah?
31. Hang on. 31. Oh, you mean 33? This?
No, 131.
Oh, 131. 131. Oh yeah, that's a horrible place. I hate that place in the right hand. I think here. You want to show that, but it's not chromatic. This. It's. I would recommend they practice like this. So they're playing, blocking out the chords, and then with stops, and then in sixes, things like that. But those are not chromatic. In the coda, you said, Claudius? Coda.
I think the chord just have a plainly chromatic one.
Yes.
Oh, you have this. That thing?
Just
Yeah, then it's not. When I play chromatic scales, usually I do the fourth finger on B flat. For the only time I use the 4 is on B flats. I find that gives me the fastest when I'm just playing a super fast chromatic scale. I don't know if that's what people are taught or not.
okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
Yeah. You can write in chat. Vanessa says thank you.
Is that Vanessa I know?
I'm not sure.
Okay. She has no face. She could be anybody.
Somebody else have chromatic in the 146.
146. These students like chromatic scales, huh? Okay, 146. Oh yeah. Well, this again, it's not chromatic. Oh, I'll tell you one thing for sure. The fingering in this Henley edition here is horrible. Horrible. You start each one on 1 and 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1. But then inside, 3, 4, 3. Yeah. 3, 4, 3. Yeah, I don't like this 3, 5, 3. That's this bad finger.
I'm now looking at the Paderewski and they have the same, by the way. So
with the 3, 5, 3. Yeah. Well, the thing is, as I said, I don't think I could be wrong, but I don't think Chopin really was in the habit of writing fingerings. I may be wrong, but I think that none of these fingerings that we see, they're all the editors.
Yeah.
So
he has fingerings or in the etudes when he wants to point
like a special effect, right? Like that sort of thing, right? Right. Right.
Just somebody asked, Pierre asked if what edition you're talking.
I usually use the Paderewski editions as a sort of a template. Most of the pieces I like. I'll tell you. I mean, when I was a kid, I learned most of Chopin using the Schirmer editions, but they have different editors. Some of them Josephi. Josephi has very good fingerings. Some of them are Mikuli, or some of them are Friedheim. But I'll tell you that the big thing with Chopin editions nowadays is this new Polish edition edited by Ekier, Jan Ekier, and that's become the sort of required or recommended edition for the Chopin competition in Warsaw. And, well, I don't know. I and every professional pianist that I know hates this edition. I mean, it just seems like, you know, you have so many options about what to choose, and he always chooses things that just make you want to scream, you know, like wrong notes and just, it's, you know, but the thing is that he was Polish and he was the longtime chairman of the Chopin competition, and, you know, my friend Piotr Paleczny, who's going to be the chairman, was his student, and so it's like a cult thing, you know, but And in the United States, those editions are very expensive. So fortunately, a lot of students don't have them. But in China, they're super cheap. It's unbelievable. They're like they all come with the Acura edition because it's so cheap in China. And so it's like I don't know, it's just a very problem for me, this edition.
Yes, Claudius.
Well, yes, I completely agree. And I think Akir tries to handle the scores like if he would edit a Beethoven sonata.
Right.
I'm always so angry if I see this. And what I also want to tell you with the Theopold, Hans Martin Theopold, I have the same experience. Once I was teaching here and I got so upset about the fingering. So I said to the student, let me just call the company and ask for his telephone number in Munich. And I got his telephone number. I didn't know that these fingerings were 80 years ago. So I could have him on the phone, and it was Hans Martin Theopold, but he was a dentist, or he is a dentist in Munich. And he said, well, I'm also playing the piano. I love the piano, and I already have had a lot of calls complaining about this. And I must tell you that I agree. I don't like his fingerings. And this is so funny. So you can still find Hans Martin Theopold in Munich, but he is a dentist and only amateur.
Well, you know, all the time when I'm teaching, you know, in Handler edition, and I do some horrible fingering with a student, then I always open it up and I look in the beginning and I say, aha, Fingersatz der Hans Martin, and I cross out his name. I'm furious with the pencil, you know, except some of the Henley editions don't have his fingerings, but tons of them do. Many do.
This is true.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a pianist's fingerings. It's
exactly.
Yeah.
It was another question. I will just do it quick because we really have to finish.
Okay.
About someone that feels a problem with the obliqueness of the final octaves. That I always find that the piece ends missing certain harmonics, which are much better on a period Pleyel and don't quite on a modern instrument. And how do you approach it?
Well, that's a very interesting and intelligent point. I can't really speak to the comparison between, you know, a big Steinway and a Pleyel. I mean, I have played Pleyels, but not this section. I don't know. I think with a lot of pedaling, I think if if you pedal clean, then it sounds very thin, like he was saying. But I think if you sort of like half change and get a lot of overtones, then I think it shouldn't be a problem. I clean it up at the end when I'm going down the chromatics, especially the last bar where I change twice. But I sort of pedal dirty, I would say, so to get all that overtone and sound that he's talking about.
Very good. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
A wonderful lecture. I enjoyed
it.
Bravo.
Bravo. Okay, thank you, Nathaniel. Thank you, Claudius. Thank you, whoever is out there.